The boss cut my department to fund his pet project. So, I built a startup that replaced his entire division. Harold Kincaid stepped to the podium like he was accepting an award, not about to destroy 30 livelihoods. The conference room fell silent as he adjusted the microphone with theatrical precision. "Effective immediately," he announced. Pausing for dramatic effect. "The Operations Optimization Division will be dissolved. Resources are needed for the Innovation Lab initiative." My team stared at me. 30 people whose fates just got decided by a man who never learned their names. My stomach dropped so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I gripped the edges of my chair until my knuckles turned white. Harold was smiling. Actually smiling? I'm Lauren Whitmore, and I had spent 7 years building that department from 3 people to 30. 7 years of solving problems nobody else wanted to touch. 7 years of making this company run smoother than it ever had. And Harold just erased us in one sentence. This is how I replaced the division my boss murdered overnight. 3 months earlier, Harold had called me into his office. He didn't look up from his phone as I entered. "Lauren, your style is functional," he said, finally glancing at me. "You lack vision. The Innovation Lab requires people who think bigger." He waved his hand dismissively before I could respond. The meeting was over before it started. I remember walking back to my desk thinking, since when does doing your job well make you disposable? My team had just finished a project that saved the company $200,000 annually. We had streamlined the supply chain process that had been broken for years. The numbers were undeniable. But Harold wasn't interested in numbers anymore. He was interested in something else, something flashier. I didn't know then that he was already planning to gut my entire department. The signs were there, but I missed them. Harold hired 3 new people for his innovation lab within 2 weeks. All came from his favorite networking events downtown. All wore expensive sneakers and talked about disruption without explaining what they actually did. One of them, a guy named Preston, walked past my desk and stopped at our project whiteboard. It was covered with key performance indicators, workflow charts, and efficiency metrics. "Oh, this is kind of mathy," he said, wrinkling his nose like he'd smelled something bad. Harold appeared behind him and laughed. "That's the old way of thinking, Preston. We're moving beyond spreadsheets." I watched Harold beam at them like a proud parent. These people couldn't explain a single operational process, but they could talk for hours about ideation and paradigm shifts. That's when I realized Harold was building a kingdom where competence was unwelcome, where looking innovative mattered more than being effective. 2 weeks later, I fixed a supply chain bottleneck that had been costing the company 6 figures every month. The solution was elegant and simple. I documented everything and prepared a presentation for the executive meeting. At the meeting, Harold stood up before I could speak. "I want to share a breakthrough insight I had," he announced. Then he presented my entire solution as his own idea. Word for word. Chart for chart. I froze in my seat. My mouth opened slightly, then closed. I manufactured a practiced corporate smile and nodded along. Around the table, my team members caught my eye. They knew. Everyone knew. But nobody said anything. Harold soaked in the praise from the executives while I sat there invisible. That's when he started undermining me publicly. The next team meeting, I was mid-presentation about quarterly improvements when Harold interrupted. "Lauren, this is boring," he said loudly, waving his hand. "You're draining the room. Can we move on to something with actual energy?" A few people laughed. The wrong kind of laugh. The nervous kind that happens when someone with power makes someone else look small. I swallowed the heat rising in my throat. My presentation had concrete data showing we'd improved efficiency by 18%, but facts didn't matter anymore. After the meeting, I sat in my office with the door closed. My hands were shaking. I opened a new folder on my laptop and labeled it Documentation. Then I started recording everything. Every meeting, every dismissal, every piece of credit stolen. I didn't know why yet. Just that I needed to. My employees started checking in with me privately. They'd knock on my office door with concerned faces. "Why is Harold targeting you?" asked Marcus, one of my senior analysts. "Why does he act like you're the problem when we're the ones keeping this place running?" asked another team member, Claire. I didn't know how to answer them. I felt like I was losing a battle I didn't even know I was fighting. Just keep your heads down and do good work, I told them. That's all we can control. But I could see the worry in their eyes. They were afraid. Afraid that if Harold could do this to me, he could do it to them too. They were right to be afraid. The next month, Harold canceled our quarterly budget allocation. No warning. No explanation. I found out through an email from accounting. Our approved projects were suddenly unfunded. Training programs were cut. Even basic software licenses were being reviewed. I marched to Harold's office. Why was our budget pulled? I demanded. He didn't even look away from his computer screen. Your department has no long-term value, Lauren. The future is in innovation, not maintenance. Don't overreact. I felt my fingers curl into fists at my sides. 7 years of building something that worked, something that mattered, and he called it maintenance. I walked out before I said something I'd regret. But in my car that evening, I made a decision. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 30 minutes after work that night. The engine was off. The silence was heavy. If Harold killed my department, he'd kill the backbone of the entire company. Operations don't look glamorous, but without us, nothing else functions. The flashy innovation lab would collapse without the foundation we provided. That's when the clarity hit me like cold water. I didn't need to fight Harold inside this broken system. I didn't need to prove myself to people who had already decided I wasn't worth listening to. I could outbuild him. Outside of it, I pulled out my phone and opened a blank note. I started typing. What if I built a platform that could do what my team does, but automated, scalable, efficient? Something that could replace entire departments. Something Harold would never see coming. The late nights started that week. After everyone left the office, I'd go home and work until 2 or 3 in the morning. Coffee became my best friend. Silence became my workspace. I sketched out a platform that could automate 80% of the operational processes my team handled manually. Inventory tracking, supply chain optimization, workflow management, report generation. Everything we did, but faster and smarter. It was efficient, scalable, bulletproof. Everything Harold claimed my department lacked. I showed the initial designs to Marcus. His eyes went wide. This could change everything, he whispered. But I needed one crucial thing before this could work. I needed proof that Harold's innovation lab was failing. I needed evidence that his vision was empty. And I needed to gather it quietly. Rumors started spreading through the office like wildfire. Harold's innovation lab had burned through half its budget in 3 months with nothing to show for it. His golden hires complained about creative blocks. They ordered $14 smoothies on company expense cards. They had brainstorming sessions that produced nothing but motivational posters. Meanwhile, basic operations were falling apart without my fully staffed department. Deadlines were missed. Orders were delayed. Customer complaints increased. The board started asking questions in closed-door meetings. I heard whispers from executives I'd worked with before. I didn't say anything. I just watched and took notes. And I kept building my platform piece by piece, late into every night. Harold had no idea what was coming. I overheard Harold in the break room the day before the announcement. He was talking to Preston and another innovation lab hire. "Tomorrow's going to be fun," Harold said with a grin. "We're making room for winners." My blood went cold. I knew exactly what he meant. My department was doomed. The axe was about to fall. I walked back to my desk and sat down slowly. My heart was pounding, but my mind was strangely clear. Instead of panicking, I breathed deeply. I closed my eyes. Let him swing the axe, I thought. Let him destroy what I built here. Because I had already prepared for what came after. I had a backup plan he didn't know existed. And when the dust settled, I'd be standing. This was the moment I described at the beginning. Harold at the podium, the death sentence delivered with a smile. The Operations Optimization Division will be dissolved. Effective immediately. The room was silent except for the hum of the projector. My team looked at me like I could somehow fix this. Like I could stand up and make it all go away. I couldn't, not here, not now. But I looked each of them in the eye and gave the smallest nod. A promise without words. Harold continued talking about exciting new directions and lean operations. He used all the corporate buzzwords that meant nothing. I stopped listening. I was already 3 steps ahead, planning our next move. This wasn't my ending. This was just the beginning of something he'd never see coming. We packed up our desks in silence. 30 people boxing up their lives in cardboard containers. One of my team members, a young analyst named Kira, approached me with red eyes. "What do we do now?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I looked around at the faces watching. Me, Marcus, Claire, Kira, others, who had trusted me to lead them. I said the words before I could overthink them. "Follow me." Not as a boast. Not as empty reassurance. As a vow. 6 of them met me in the parking lot after we'd turned in our badges. 6 of my best people who had nowhere else to go and nothing left to lose. "I've been working on something," I told them. "Meet me at my apartment tomorrow morning. Bring your laptops." The startup became real in that moment. 6 people crowded into my small apartment the next morning. We sat on the floor surrounded by takeout boxes and laptops balanced on knees. I showed them the platform I'd been building, the automation tools, the efficiency algorithms, everything I'd designed in those late-night sessions. "This is how we survive," I told them. "We finish building this. We make it better than anything else on the market." And we prove Harold was wrong. Marcus leaned forward, studying the code on my screen. "This is actually brilliant, Lauren. If we can pull this off—" "We can," I interrupted. "We will." For the first time in months, I felt alive. Not afraid. Not defeated. Alive. But Harold wasn't done sabotaging me yet. While we worked on the platform, I applied for temporary consulting roles to pay rent. I had bills. My savings wouldn't last forever. 3 companies turned me down in a row. Professional, polite rejections. The 3rd recruiter slipped up on the phone. "I'll be honest with you, Lauren. Your former boss gave you a rough reference. He said you were resistant to innovation and had difficulty adapting to new leadership styles." My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. Harold wasn't just cutting my department. He was trying to erase me completely, burn my reputation so thoroughly that I couldn't work anywhere else. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall. Then I turned back to my laptop with renewed focus. He just lit the fuse. He had no idea what was about to explode. We worked like people who had nothing left to lose. Because we didn't. Prototype, testing, adjusting, breaking it, fixing it, making it stronger. 16-hour days became normal. We ordered pizza at midnight and debugged code until sunrise. My apartment became our headquarters, our laboratory, our war room. Marcus built the back-end infrastructure. Claire designed the user interface. Kira handled data modeling. I orchestrated everything and kept us moving forward. We argued. We disagreed. We pushed each other harder than any corporate job ever had. And slowly, impossibly, I watched our product come alive. It was beautiful. It was fast, it worked. Now we just needed someone to take a chance on us. Then, 8 weeks after Harold destroyed our department, we landed our first pilot client. A mid-sized logistics company agreed to try our beta version. They were struggling with the exact problems we'd solved 100 times before. We implemented our platform over 1 weekend. I barely slept, terrified something would break. Within 2 weeks, their operational delays dropped by 38%. Their inventory accuracy improved. Their costs decreased. They called me on a Friday afternoon. "We want to sign a full contract," the operations director said. I put the phone on mute and screamed. Marcus grabbed my shoulders. Claire started crying. Kira laughed so hard she couldn't breathe. We'd done it. We'd actually done it. Word spread fast after that. One client told another. We got referrals, inquiries, serious, interest from companies 10 times, larger than our first client. Everything was about to change. 3 months after launch, I received an email that made me read it 3 times to make sure it was real. Valerie Chen, a major tech investor, wanted a meeting. She'd seen our pilot results and heard about our growth. Your platform addresses a massive market gap, her email read. I'd like to discuss investment opportunities. I stared at my screen, afraid to blink in case the email disappeared. If this worked, everything changed. We could scale, hire, grow beyond anything I'd imagined. Marcus looked over my shoulder and whistled. That's Valerie Chen. She funded 3 unicorn startups. I scheduled the meeting for the following week. Meanwhile, back at my old company, Harold's Innovation Lab was about to implode. Spectacularly, a whistleblower from inside the company leaked photos to a business blog. The images showed Harold's Innovation Lab in all its glory. Ping pong tables, untouched whiteboards with meaningless buzzwords, designer beanbag chairs, a espresso machine that cost more than a car, and 0 deliverables. No products. No results. Nothing but expensive furniture and wasted time. The board was furious. The CEO demanded answers. Harold scrambled to create presentations, explaining his vision and requesting more time. But the numbers didn't lie. He'd burned through millions with nothing to show for it. I saw his photo in a business article looking exhausted and defensive. He looked like a king watching his castle burn down around him. I felt no satisfaction, just cold, clear focus, because the next morning, I had the most important meeting of my life. I walked into Valerie Chen's downtown office, wearing my best suit and carrying a tablet loaded with our presentation. I didn't brag. I didn't oversell. I just showed her the results. Efficiency improvements, cost reductions, client satisfaction scores, growth projections based on current demand. Valerie listened without interrupting. She took notes. She asked sharp, intelligent questions that showed she understood exactly what we'd built. After 45 minutes, she leaned back in her chair. "This is going to disrupt your entire industry," she said calmly. "You've built something that makes traditional operational departments obsolete, including the one you came from." She smiled slightly. "I'm in. Let's talk terms." She funded us on the spot. Enough capital to scale properly. Hire a real team. Compete with anyone. The explosion happened the next morning. Harold's Innovation Lab was officially shut down by the board. His golden hires were let go. The expensive office space was emptied. The board released a public statement. "We are looking externally for more effective operational solutions to improve company efficiency." Externally. I read that word 3 times, my heartbeat quickening. Marcus called me immediately. "Did you see it?" "They're looking externally." I had seen it, and I knew exactly what it meant. 2 days later, my phone rang with a number I recognized. The CEO's office at my former company. "Ms. Whitmore, the board would like to schedule a meeting with you. We heard about your startup. We'd like to discuss a potential partnership." I kept my voice steady. "Of course. I'd be happy to meet." The final showdown wasn't going to be a confrontation. It was going to be a contract. I walked into the same boardroom where Harold had humiliated me 6 months earlier. The same table, the same chairs, the same projector screen. But everything was different now. The board members shifted in their seats as I entered. Not dismissive, attentive. I presented our platform professionally. I showed them exactly what it could do. How it could replace every function that Harold had destroyed when he gutted my department. Every process, every workflow, everything he'd called maintenance and dismissed as having no long-term value. The CFO leaned forward. This would eliminate the need for an entire operational division. "Yes," I said simply. "That's exactly what it does." They asked about implementation timelines, costs, support structures. I had answers for everything. Because I'd lived those answers for 7 years before Harold threw them away. After 2 hours, they asked for a moment to confer privately. I waited outside, my heart pounding. They called me back in 15 minutes later. The CEO extended her hand. "We'd like to move forward with a 3-year contract. Your platform will handle all operational optimization for the company." I shook her hand, keeping my expression professional even though I wanted to scream. My startup was going to replace the entire division that Harold had destroyed. Every function he'd dismissed. Every process he'd called outdated. We were coming back, but this time we were irreplaceable. As I left the building, I passed Harold's old office. It was already empty, cleaned out. Harold had been removed from his position the week before. Not because of me. Because of his own arrogance, his mismanagement, his ego that wrote checks his competence couldn't cash. I didn't stop to look inside. I didn't need a victory lap. His downfall was self-inflicted. Harold's termination became official 2 weeks after I signed the contract. The company released a brief statement about pursuing new leadership directions. I heard through former colleagues that he packed up his office on a Tuesday morning. No ceremony, no goodbye party, just cardboard boxes and a security escort to his car. I wasn't there to see it. I was in my new office across town, meeting with our growing team. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate his failure. Because revenge had never been the point. Building something that worked, something that mattered, something that proved competence wins over charisma in the end. That was the point. Harold had tried to erase me. Instead, he'd forced me to become something stronger, something he could never touch again. My rise was only beginning, and it had nothing to do with him anymore. 6 months later, my company employed 40 people. Many were from my old team who had followed me into uncertainty and helped build something extraordinary. I sat in my new office with sunlight streaming through the windows. Everything was quiet and steady, professional, real. We'd signed 8 major clients. Valerie had introduced us to 3 more investors. We were expanding into new markets. And my former company's operations were running smoother than they had in years. Because of what we built, because of what Harold tried to destroy, I realized something sitting there in that peaceful moment. I didn't beat Harold by fighting him. I didn't win by playing his games or trying to prove myself in his broken system. I beat him by becoming everything he feared, capable, resilient, unintimidated by his power plays and ego. When someone cuts you out, you have 2 choices. You can let them define your ending, or you can build something they can't replace. I chose to build, and I let my success tell the story he never wanted anyone to hear.